Politics requires civility.
We each have a responsibility to model civility.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
We are delighted you have joined us for today's program, especially this important topic regarding civility. Before we get into our discussion, I'd like for you to meet all of our panelists. Let's begin with the gentleman to my right.
My name is Bishop Michael Olson, and I am the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I am an Episcopal priest, canonically resident in the Diocese of Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Tony Matthews, and I serve as senior pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
My name is Mel Robeck. I'm an ordained minister with the Assemblies of God, and I'm senior professor of church history and ecumenics, as well as a special assistant to the president for ecumenical relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm the Richard J. Dinda Professor of Lutheran Identity and Mission at Concordia University in Austin, Texas, which is affiliated with Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod.
I'm Andrea Luxton. I'm president of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. I love listening to your little bios as you go from person to person. It's very informative. Sometime we should probably take a whole program and hear really what you do. We hear your title, but it'd be interesting to hear what else you do. But I think we're going to get into our program for just now for our discussion. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush declared that deep successes, quote, are made not of gold and silk, but of better hearts and finer souls, close quote. He also added this: America is never wholly herself unless she is engaged in high moral principle. We as a people have such a purpose today. It is to make kinder the face of the nation and gentler the face of the world, he said, close quote. In the many eulogies at the time of his death, focus kept returning to Bush's sense of decency and culture of civility. In another example, after his loss for re-election for President to Bill Clinton in 1992, Bush sent a letter to the new president which ended this way, quote, "Your success now is our country's success. I am rooting hard for you," close quote. In the wake of his death, Ron Kaufman, a former aide of George H.W., wrote that his passing signaled the end of a culture of civility. While other politicians on both sides of the political divide have also been recognized for their determination to model civility, the conversations around Bush's death raised the important question of whether there is any current civility in American politics and whether a return to civility is possible or necessary. The panel today is asked to consider these questions, at least these three. First of all, how critical is civility as a value for politicians to model? Next question, is it possible to be civil and be effective as a leader? Can a government and country make kinder the face of the nation and gentler the face of the world? That was a two-part question. Third question, as faith communities, what role, if any, do we have in modeling civility? Is this a mandate of living the gospel with integrity? That is our subject for today. I'd like first to go back to those who helped to begin the program. Bishop Olson, welcome back to the program. Glad to have you here today. Tell us more of your thoughts on the subject, please.
It's very good to be with you. I think good people can be mistaken about means to an end. And politics is about finding the right means to our shared or common end. I think also precisely because of that civility enables us to, first of all, presume goodwill on the other person who's given their lives to public service, for example, and that one can debate and argue vigorously about means to an end, but at least there's a shared purpose and a shared sense of goal. And I think without civility, we confuse means and ends, and soon call into question the very goodness of the person, or at least their goodwill. I think that that's important because in our current climate, and perhaps it's always been any part of a climate that involves human beings, where there's always a temptation to want to call into mind not only the motives, but the character of the person who doesn't agree with you. And especially in leadership and in service to the common good, it's required, I think, for politicians and public figures, but particularly those in office, to provide a sense of civility for the sake of our moral equilibrium.
All right, thank you very much and for your participation today. Canon Peterson, you think that everyone is responsible, including you, me, each one of us. Tell us more of your thoughts on that subject, please.
I could not agree more with you in your statement that you've just said, nor could I agree more than with Bishop Olson has just said. When President Bush died on March 30th last year, we were indeed reminded of his great civility that embraced the totality of his life. And I think as a result of his death, actually the word civility is now being used more in our political discussions, simply because it is something that we've lost. And that civility is having a difficult time today. Who will ever forget the gracious generosity of President Bush after having been defeated by Bill Clinton, when Bush left that letter that the moderator referred to in the Oval Office. He was able to write with compassion, "You are now the new president of the United States. I wish you well. I wish your family well. Your success now is our country's success." I wonder if we could possibly hear that today in our dialogue and in our conversations coming from the White House. But the final words, "I'm rooting hard for you." Imagine a president rooting for an opponent who had defeated him.
All right, thank you.
I'm not quite done.
You seemed to pause, so sorry. I was quick on the uptake.
It's a rhetorical pause.
You can inhale. You have the right and privilege to inhale from time to time. So sorry.
Anyway, the final words are, "Good luck, George." Imagine that civility that he had. Now, my second point is that the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Pittsburgh, David Zupik, is that correct how I pronounce it, has written an article that I hope all of you will go online to download. It's called 9 Rules for Civility from the Catholic Tradition. I would say it was from the human tradition of what it means for us to be human. And one of the things he points out is that civility demonstrates strength, not weakness of thought, voice, or conviction. And that in civility includes and encapsulates the robust and passionate engagement of those who have differing points of view. I'm now completed.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your indulgence. Dr. Matthews, welcome to the program.
Yeah, I think
your thoughts, please.
It's a great comment, and I agree with both of our colleagues. I think this was great opening comments. I think it is critical. This is a pet peeve of mine. I just think it's critical for politicians and all leaders to model civility at all levels. And I think it's, time out for people saying that we didn't elect a pastor of the country, but a president. And that's not just for our current president, it's for President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton, not singling out any particular president. I think because presidents and leaders, congressmen, congresswomen, they are all influencers. And they are influencing the current generation and the next generation. And I think the scripture applies to everyone, no matter who they are. And the scripture tells us that we should be slow to speak, quick to hear, and slow to anger. And so I'm praying for civility. I know that when we have different presidents, and I'm kind of disappointed in our Christian community in part for not speaking out against the lack of civility. I think a person can support a politician and at the same time offer some constructive criticism and point out when he or she is acting uncivil. And I think we've kind of lost our testimony a tad bit because we're picking and choosing political sides without really looking at the civility of the individual.
Calling out the church on this one a little bit then. All right, thank you very much. Dr. Robeck.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on this last comment. I think you've hit it on the head. I think that the church does have a huge role to play, and it has failed to stand up to that. I have a friend, former colleague, that I look up to very much, and one of the things he taught me years and years ago was the fact that we as Christians need to be critically loyal. You know, there's something really important about that. And we can be critically loyal to our denominations, or we can be critically loyal to our political parties, or we can be critically, but the important thing is not just loyalty, but the ability to critique it in ways that would be useful, helpful, and positive. You know, as I began to think about this question, I mean, it's part of what it is about the fall. You know, all of us live in a sinful world, in a sinful society, and just like water goes downhill, it seems to me that so does culture, so do societies, and so forth. And I think, you know, all of us are guilty of the sin of being uncritical. We're also being overly critical of sometimes when we don't have all the facts. Every one of us is capable of civility. Our country is capable of civility, but we don't see it often expressed. Certainly in recent months or years, we have not seen it. You know, but it appears in all kinds of things. The way white folk treated black folk in the earlier centuries, the way we name our enemies. Now, we don't like Iran, who calls us devils or something like that, but the fact of the matter is every time we go to war, we have a nickname for those people that we're trying to kill. It depersonalizes them. That's what it's intended to do. And we see our government doing it in so many ways, and we see it in social media all over the place, people calling each other names and doing all kinds of things that are uncivil. I even went to the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity in a mainline Protestant church this year, and they were singing a song that was supposed to be about unity, except that they said something like, "We act against the lies that other churches tell." Okay,
The spirit of
I know who they have in
ecumenism.
mind. You know, I know who they have in mind. And you know, we have lost the inability to speak to one another across the table, recognizing each other as brothers and sisters. Right. And here we are standing there and supposedly singing about Christian unity when it's really about telling the other person they're all wrong and they're stupid and lying. That's even worse. I think Scripture, if we come back to Scripture, there are all kinds of places where it really is very helpful. I love Proverbs 15:1, and I have taught my kids to think very seriously about that. A soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. All you have to do is look at Congress and the president, and there it is, right out there in the front page of every newspaper and media system. Or how about the old golden rule? Do unto others what you would have them to do unto you. Where does it begin and where does it stop? I'm willing to be civil. The question is, are you?
All right. Well, thank you for. Are you preaching now? Thank you. All right. Dr. Choval, your thoughts on the subject, please.
Were you talking to me?
Well, if the shoe fits.
Now we are. Yes.
Yes. As a child growing up, learning the Ten Commandments, having to memorize it for our Lutheran confirmation classes, we learned Luther's meanings as well, which the command I'm thinking of is not bearing false witness. And the way Luther presents it is he always turned what the negative was and to say, but positively, this is what it means. And the one phrase that always stuck in my mind was when dealing with our neighbors, to put the best construction on everything. And I always love that, to think, whenever someone's saying something, how can you put the best construction on it to try to get into who that person is and think about what they're saying. And I think, in light of this conversation, it's really kind of really what he was saying in a lot of ways is it's a form of civility. I was just teaching philosophy class a few weeks ago. We were going through logical fallacies. One of the classic logical fallacies is ad hominem attacks, which is to associate an argument with a person and then to deride the person, and hence, therefore, it diminishes the argument, which it really doesn't. But of course, politics is full of this by attributing a person's argument with the person, and therefore it's bad. It's Obamacare, or it's Trump's wall. I mean, I don't care how you put it. It's a way of trying to somehow demonize the idea. The ideas need to be argued on their merits, apart from who's presenting that. And I think that that's a part of civility too, and we try to teach that at the university about focusing on argument, not who's saying it.
And keep at it. Don't ever let up on that. Now, Dr. Luxton, speaking of universities and campuses
actually, that was
and
a
philosophies.
perfect connection, because I was thinking of when I started teaching, I taught English, and so teaching logic, teaching rhetoric, teaching not ad hominem, etc. And the Student Association president got very riled up about something going on in the university, called the students out on strike to have a meeting. And then he presented this speech, and everyone got all wound up in support of him. So I thought, I taught this guy. So I pulled him aside and I said, hey, hang on a minute here, in that speech you did, and I named all the fallacies of what he was doing. And he says, I know. He said, but, they didn't have to believe me, did they? And that was the response. And so I pushed it with him on the moral, ethical side of this, and it was very much the means to an end. Right? It was a means to an end. And I do think that is a significant problem. People see it as a means to an end. So if I want to get this, if I act civilly, I might not get what I need. And it seems to me that when we act that way, we may win the war, or we may win the battle, wrong way around, but we don't win the war. And I think it's very, very important with politicians, all of us as Christian leaders, if we can't have civility, we are modeling something that is really, really dangerous. Bible, very clear, we're all made in the image of God. That requires dignity, respect for everybody, even if they disagree completely from our position. It doesn't matter.
Some would see this as a symptom of what some describe as sinful nature or the depraved nature. It's just part of who we are. We struggle against that. And Ken Peterson, what do we do in our churches and schools to help teach the positive and to be mindful of this?
I love the phrase, the holiness of language. And the language we use, are we being holy? Are the words of the language being holy? When we are telling lies, is that holy language?
Exaggerating.
Exaggerating, is that holy language? And it seems to me that the Acts of the Apostles, with the day of Pentecost, calls us and challenges us to that holy language.
All right, thank you, Dr. Matthews.
I'm praying for the day that we can master, or at least begin learning how to listen. I think that's one major problem that we have from politics in D.C. to pastors to pews, is that we have to learn how to listen and take constructive criticism. And then when criticism is meant to be destructive, I think we need to take time out and listen to our critics. I had a mentor once who, years ago, who set me down when I was written a letter that was designed to destroy me, and I wanted to go street ministry. You guys know what street ministry is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to go street ministry, like hood ministry on them. And my mentor set me down and made me read that letter with him, and then he pointed out things that I thought were awful, and he said, yeah, that's right about you. And then let's read some more. That's right about you. I became so angry, but he taught me how to listen, because a broken clock is right at least twice a day, right? So we have to learn how to listen to our critics and take, and I wish I could see that in D.C. and in our churches and in the land. It's beneficial.
Well, thank you so much. We're out of time for this segment. This is a fascinating discussion, and thank you for it so far. We will take some time in a few moments for summation statements, but before then, there's an important announcement I'd like you to stand by for. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you. Welcome back. I do look forward to hearing from you. Your cards, your letters, tell us if we're hitting the mark or if there's something we're forgetting. So please take a few moments to write us. You can go to the website. You can find there an email portal. You can send us a message. That means, and there are also some archive programs there from past programs we'd like for you to tune in and watch. Just now, we're going to go to our summation statements. Let's begin with Bishop Olson. You're first.
Politics requires civility, both in the attainment of shared ends, in the coming to a common understanding of the appropriate means to those ends, and also with a greater understanding of the issues at hand. Also, civility enables a man or woman who is entrusted with public office to grow into that office instead of asking the office or demanding the office to become just simply an extension of their own personality. The late Lee Atwater, who managed the campaign of President George H.W. Bush in 1988, spent a good amount of time as he was dying seeking, making amends, and coming to a greater articulation of that very lesson.
Thank you very much. And then Dr. Matthews, your summation.
Yes, I think civility is critical to politics and to everyone in the land. And one key thing that we can always do is separate the people from the problem. And if we can do that, I think that would move us down the road. And may God bless you in your disputes and your conflicts, but all conflict is not bad.
Thank you very much. Dr. Troval, your summation, please.
You know, I'd like to also make a suggestion that I learned from a pastor who all that he ever did was he just asked questions. He would just say, oh, really? That's very interesting. Tell me more about that. And he would continue to ask questions, which was amazing in terms of the ability to have dialogue. That civility, I think questioning and asking genuine questions are a central part of civility. The president of our university encourages us all on the faculty to ask questions before we speak.
Good counsel, good advice. Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Luxton, your summation, please.
I think when there's lack of civility, it's usually for a quick win. But I think all of us who are in a leadership position have a responsibility that goes beyond a quick win. And particularly it's for the future of the young people that we work with, the congregations that we work with. What are we teaching? And I have a fear that if what is seen modeled is a lack of civility, that is just going to get more and more deeply embedded into our society. I feel fortunate that I have worked with some individuals, especially earlier in my career, that just modeled civility to the extreme under great duress at times. And that was extremely helpful to me. And my hope is that more politicians and those of us in administration that will follow that, modeling civility in a way that will help others see how things can be done differently.
Thank you very much. Dr. Robeck, your summation.
Yeah, I think that people in the United States are hungry for civility. I think that's part of what went on in the election in the fall. It's also, however, the case that civility was not won in that election by any stretch. I think that what we've had is an increase of rhetoric among some people, especially new Congress people, that has been extremely harmful when they don't know the ropes yet. It's as though we have come to the point right now where the loudest voice is the one that's going to be heard. The loudest voice is the one that's going to win the argument, and therefore I'm going to be the loudest and the most difficult voice that you have to listen to. But I do think if we turn back to Scripture, it still says, after thousands of years, that a soft answer turns away wrath, and grievous words stir up anger. And I think we need to think seriously about soft words.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Canon Peterson, your summary.
Yes, I'd like to go back to our cliffhanger at the very beginning when I said we each have a responsibility to model civility. And it's so easy today to look at Washington or government in relationship to the lack of civility. That's for sure. No one's going to doubt that. But I think that we also have to look in the church, in the synagogue, in the mosque for the lack of civility. I would say that, Mel, in what you described at the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity service is a perfect example of the church lacking civility. Civility is not willful ignorance of another person's opinion. Let me repeat that. Civility is not willful ignorance of another person's opinion. And it seems to me that we are engaged in willful ignorance today. Certainly, the headwinds are against civility, and those headwinds are strong.
All right, thank you very much. And to everyone on the panel today, thank you for your participation. And I'd like to suggest that this has been a good example of civility right around this table from week to week. You know, it's interesting. I know these gentlemen and lady both on and off the camera, and I can tell you that they are civil both on and off the camera. For now, the Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil, yes, and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And so now, friends, until next week at the same time and over this very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.